One. Good afternoon, Panther fans. Welcome to another podcast episode of the Four Man Rush. As always, I'm your main man, Kevin Avery, coming at you here. And that's 4MR underscore country Kev for all you Twitter followers out there. As always, got a longtime friend and guest of the show, former Carolina Panther Pro Bowler Mike Wahle is joining me today for this episode. As you all know, Mike's been on here several times, beginning the last playoff season back in 2022, and he periodically comes on out of his busy schedule to drop knowledge with us and give us his insight and answer a lot of questions and kill a lot of myths that us fans have about the what's going on behind the scenes in the NFL. As always, like to give Mike the opportunity to let us know what's going on with him. But once again, Mike, welcome back, and how you been? And let us know what's going on with you and Process to Perform lately.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me on, Kev. It's always a pleasure. You can find me at Mike Wahle 68 on Twitter, Process to Perform on Instagram. I've been, I work with some guys in the NFL, so I have some NFL clients that I spend a lot of time with. I also, through that Process to Perform company, I also work with young athletes. But one thing that's been going pretty great recently is the On My Block podcast. It's on the Believe Network. You can find it on the Process to Perform channel on YouTube. It's been gathering some momentum here. We obviously cover the Packers more often than not, but like this week, because it's an interesting week, I'm gonna branch out into some other teams. But it's been a lot of fun. Get a lot of good interaction and feedback there. So having a good go of it, man.
Okay, great. Well, definitely glad to hear things are going well. Your knowledge is definitely needed in NFL, so it's great to hear that you are working with a lot of the players. Because man, down here in Carolina, Mike, man, it's been rough, man. It's definitely not what we're expecting. I believe the last time I spoke with you a few months ago when we came on, it was like excitement. We had we seemed like we had a pretty good free agency, a pretty good draft, had traded up for the number one overall pick, had all the starters returning from last year's team that built off the late season run under former interim coach Steve Wilkes. Things were promising. Panthers GM Scott Fitter's like, hey, we're in a position where we just drop in a quarterback and we should be good to go. Well, the first quarter of the season has went past the first four games. Currently, Carolina sits with a record of 0-4 with two divisional losses out the gate and two other NFC losses, with being week 3 at Seattle and just yesterday at home against the Minnesota Vikings. So, Mike, I reached out to you, man, because I trust you, even for all my knowledge. It fails in comparison to what you can provide insight on. But now I do trust enough in my eyes to see that there's some things going on, particularly in the trenches, that's definitely causing a lot of the pain that we're seeing on the field.
Yeah.
But I'd like to start off by letting you let us know what it is from what your eyes have laid upon with Carolina. That could be both the offense line and defense line that's sticking out on you. That's a problem for us.
Well, it's a difficult thing because, like you said, I thought Steve Wilkes did such a good job at the end of last season, and then Frank Reich loses a job at another club, and then immediately gets rehired. Which we talked about this before. Frank could be the best coach in the world. That just as a business practice doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Bryce Young is right now a bright spot in the sense that he's got a lot of ability and he's got an opportunity to be a good quarterback in the National Football League. But whether it's the quarterback room, whether it's just the way that they're calling plays, the options that they're giving him, the lack of freedom at the line of scrimmage, your offense is very, very bland. And they're not doing things that work symbiotically with one another. And it's putting what I would call I don't even want to say average offense, an offensive line that could be playing better than they are kind of being exposed, at least especially this last game against the Minnesota Vikings, because they don't have the ability to pass off some of the stuff on the interior of the offensive line. but they also don't have the ability at the quarterback position, it looks like, to get out of bad plays.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many run blitzes Minnesota basically just said, I don't think your receivers can separate. I don't think you can hold up in the run or pass game if we bring 7. And they just kept absolutely mollywopping the running back, the quarterback, pressure all the time, getting into the backfield, resetting the line of scrimmage. So you've got this situation where you've got a couple guys on the offensive line that are losing individual battles, certainly, and especially in, I think, interior, they have a hard time passing off some of the stunts and twists. But you just fundamentally have some issues with they got more guys than you can block, and you're not getting out of bad plays. So there's a lot of blame to be spread around here, but certainly I know James Camp, the offensive line coach, and he's a technician. And when you look at that offensive line, and let's just start particularly with the number one prospect, Ike Ekwonu. Ike Ekwonu is a phenomenal athlete with a great attitude, and he's got great feet, but he has absolutely terrible footwork, and his footwork is getting him in a lot of trouble. He loses in the run game. He sometimes loses in the pass game, but even the double team, all the stuff that he should be great at is not as effective as he should be because his footwork is so bad. And that is a lack of discipline. I know I can just tell everybody out there firsthand, James Campen teaches how to do things a certain way, but when you're such a high level athlete, sometimes it just takes a long time to understand, like, everybody else here is a good athlete too. Like, you're not, it's not big fish, small pond anymore. Everybody's good. And if you're not going to play with great technique in this league, you're going to get beat a lot. So we can go down the line if you want to talk about more guys. You have something to add to that, but that's really what it looks like to me.
Yeah, you definitely hit the nail on the head. Me and Smooth, we stay watching the trenches, as you know, and Smooth was the first one to point it out, even in the preseason, that the footwork of left tackle Ike Ekwonu is what gets him in trouble. It's like he'll have everything else set up, but his footwork, whether he stops or whether he has one poor step, and he just like gives up the advantage that he initially has, and like you said, it definitely gets him in trouble. But yeah, we could definitely go down the line here because it seems to kind of be a little bit of a
sure
revolving door since right guard Austin Corbett is still out. Now, with that being with yesterday being the 4th game, I think he is eligible to return depending on his status. Probably won't know that until Wednesday when the injury report comes out. But you touched on Ike. Let's go to the next position. His former roommate, classmate at North Carolina State, rookie left guard Chandler Zavala.
Mm-hmm.
Training camp in preseason, he was at right guard, and then they made a move when Brady Christensen was out for the season with a torn triceps to put him at left guard. And it's kind of been hot and cold with him as well. I know the last game at Seattle, I think he gave up something like 14 quarterback pressures or something like that.
In one game?
Yeah, that's now, Mike. We know how you feel about we know how you feel about Pro Football Focus. That's where they had. That's where they had.
Well, listen, Zavala, here's the deal. Like, he's a young player. This is the hard part, right? Like, he's a 4th-round draft pick, which means all that means if you're a 4th-round draft pick is that whoever drafted you thinks you're probably athletically limited. That's at the offensive line position. That's what or you don't have enough experience, or you didn't play at a big school. Okay, so Zavala could be a good player over the long term, but when you're looking at the short term and you're asked to do some certain things, especially coming in, dropping in there, and not necessarily having answers for difficult questions at the quarterback position or at the coordinator or quarterback's coach position, which I don't know who's calling the shots there. But Zavala's got, he tries to play in a hip hinge position. He keeps his hands really low, and he kind of gets small, which everything except for the low hands is okay. But you see, he gets in trouble a lot. He gives up that chest because his hands can't come up. You can chop down on his forearms, and he doesn't really play in the run. So in the pass game, you see where the defensive tackle can get to his body. In other words, he doesn't punch and extend. He doesn't keep the person off his body. And what that does, that builds in time, right? So he has no time to react. So if you want to spin or do an inside move, it's like if he doesn't win on the footwork, he's going to lose for sure. So that's kind of the issue. He can get a lot better in the pass pro. In the run game, when you look at him, more often than not right now. And again, just a young player, instead of running through the block, trusting your footwork, it's kind of shuffle, get into like both feet on the ground, squared up, hip extension, get out. But now you have nowhere to go. In other words, you stop your feet from moving. You kind of have this extension. You're kind of warring at the line of scrimmage. Maybe your ass is turned into the hole, but you're not really moving the guy off the spot, right? It's because you don't have that momentum. You're not staying on your track. So just some really simple. What's so funny is like every time we get on here, we talk about the same thing. It's real basics of the sport. If you get good at the basics of the sport's really not that. It's not nearly as difficult as we make it out to be. So I think there's a future for him. Certainly, he just needs to really work on the fundamentals. If you get your footwork down, just that, you're going to be twice the player you are now. Bradley Bozeman, look at the center position. I think Bradley's just kind of is who he is, right? Like we talked to him on your show before. I think he's a good player in the National Football League. He's not going to overwhelm anybody with his athleticism. He's having a hard time passing some of this stuff off with Cade Mays, with Zavala. I don't know if I can attribute that to him. I think he has the most experience of that group. Looking at Cade, this game in particular, it looked like, I'm talking about the Minnesota game, whether they were just spiking the 3 technique, where they were folding people over in the TE game, whether they were running like the safety off the edge and moving people down and having to run maybe a triple call with the tackle or swap something off on the backside with the center. It just isn't happening. And it just turns into like we're chasing guys on different levels. And you just saw the linebackers, whether they're running cross dogs or whether they're running a stun off the defensive tackle. There's just too many times that these guys aren't on the same page, talking about the center and the right guard, the center and the left guard, the right guard and the right tackle. It's really, really difficult against NFL caliber players, linebackers, defensive tackles, to block them one-on-one when they're moving around. If you're not like trying to use those combination blocks to get up to the second level off the line of scrimmage and cover people up. There's just too many guys that are hanging off with half a body, an arm, willing and able to make a tackle against that interior line. Taylor Moton's always been a good pro. Yeah, I mean, he's a good player. He always has been. He's got good technique against really good players. Sometimes he's going to get overwhelmed. Sometimes he gets bull rushed, but he's a really good football player. He's a guy you can build stuff on. It's just, again, when I watched him this last week, I don't see him making a ton of mistakes. I see him being put in a position where he might get the spiking, defensive end, but then the safety's coming off the edge. There's nobody to account for him. It's like, well, what do? You can't do much about it.
Yeah. And Mike, while you was talking just now, I was able to come across it on Twitter here. I sent it to your inbox. If you're able to pull it up while we talk here, actually, you was talking about Cade Mays. Actually, the right guard is someone else. Is actually a guy named Calvin Throckmorton.
Oh yeah, Throckmorton. Sorry. So Throckmorton. Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. I watched two tapes. So Throckmorton yesterday, number 76, right?
Yeah, 76. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Throckmorton doesn't move his feet very well. So he gets his backside is in the hole. So he'll punch and extend you, but he's punching and extend you with his pads turned towards the sideline. So the hole's gone, right? It's like predetermined already where the running back's going to run. So in all these things, we kind of have the same issue at the left guard position. So Throckmorton, when I watch him, I think one of those issues is you got to have there's at the interior offensive line position, it's mission critical to have great footwork, but you also have to have good feet. Like you ever watch Shaq Mason?
Yes.
Okay, Shaq Mason's got incredible feet. He doesn't necessarily have good footwork, right? In other words, he can put himself in good positions because he understands how his body moves, his balance and everything, but sometimes his feet are it looks like unorthodox. Throckmorton actually looks like his feet are kind of where they're supposed to be, but they don't move at the pace of the game necessarily. So he needs to be able to speed up the pace of play. So when he gets to punch and extend, it's like you extend your hips, you throw everything into the defensive tackle. Now you got to have your feet chase your hips and run through the block. You have to get in your train tracks and keep going. Every time you just punch and extend on a guy, and the Minnesota Vikings, I think interior are pretty good at doing this. They want to stack and shed and read you. And if you're not going to move your feet, it's very easy to, of course, come up with your backside in the hole and then make it difficult for the running back to get through.
Yeah, and speaking of the running back here, Mike, it was something that was put out after the game yesterday evening. A very telltale sign. Like a lot of the Panther fans have gripe about the play calling that's been done so far by Frank Wright. It seems to be extremely vanilla. We was told this was the vanilla that we saw in the preseason was just to protect what we were going to do in the regular season. And right now, it really, ooh, it just feels like vanilla all over. Like it was saying that the Panthers have only used 3 personnel groupings. 92% is 11 personnel. I think 4% was like 12 personnel, and I think the other one was.
Well, they ran a ton of 12 personnel in this Minnesota game, and quite frankly, it's when you're playing against like a 3-4 defense, or someone's playing 5 defensive linemen, and I actually like Ian Thomas as a blocker. Right. I mean, I think he's good. He does a good job. And I don't, we can't really call, like, let's not call Hayden Hurst like an inline blocking tight end. We could say Tommy Tremble and Ian can both block. But for me, it's like if you're going to bring 5 defensive linemen in the game, and I'm going to try to block one of those guys with a tight end, then that tight end better be really, really good at his job. Otherwise, I'd rather just go to nickel, go to 11 personnel, and have 4 guys in the game, and just instead of having 2 tight ends trying to block in there, just have 1. It's like if you're bringing guys to the party, they better be really good at their job. They better be better at their job than the defensive end is in the run game. Otherwise, it's like, for me, it doesn't really add up.
Yeah, because we was watching at the game yesterday, and it seems like whenever Ian Thomas came in, we ran, and whenever Hurst came in, we passed. So, like I said, it just seems to be a lot of predictability.
And what'll happen? And what'll happen there, Kev? Just so like your fans know, your listeners know, is they'll tag plays with the tight ends that they want in the game. So and it sounds so stupid. They'll go upstairs. They'll go and they'll say, we got this running play, and make sure Ian's in the game. And then they'll go, we got this pass. That passing play is for Hayden. And it's like the other team like they're scouting you too. Like they know that when this guy goes in the game, it's going to be a pass. And when you watch Bryce Young and the situations they put him in, so they're in kind of the shotgun RPO look all the time, but they don't run RPOs. Right. And then they go under center, but they don't have under center play action pass. It's like you don't really understand what's going on. It's not like the run schemes are bad, but they don't have answers for, like, if you're in shotgun, you run an RPO and you see 4 coming out 4 week, then you can't hand the ball off. It just can't do it. Pretty simple. You got to have a check, or you got to keep the ball, and then you have to have, like, Patrick Mahomes runs out there, plus he can throw the ball, or Caleb Williams at USC. They do the RPO and he's running, they can still throw the ball, or he can run. Like, you need options, and you got a quarterback, I think, specifically because he can do all these things.
Yep.
And they're just, I mean, honestly, they're just handcuffing, at least it appears to be, that they're handcuffing the offense or handcuffing the quarterback. Maybe they don't want to, they don't want to open the fire hose too wide too early. But you see some other guys in the league. You see C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson to some extent, but really C.J. just playing lights out football right now. And it's like, I can keep eating. I can keep eating it. And you feel like Bryce Young is that guy when you listen to him talk. You see his demeanor on the practice field and on the sidelines. So it's perplexing. Why would you bring this guy in and then handcuff him the way they are? Because everybody's suffering right now.
It's definitely sufferable. And speaking of the run game, things like that, another stat that came out yesterday with the Panthers on 15 first downs, they ran 13 times. I think Miles Sanders had 13 carries for like 19 yards. It seemed to be halfback dive every single time. It's like we didn't see any ISO plays, nothing off tackle, no tall sweep. It's just like it just pretty much, first down. We about to run up the middles with Miles Sanders, and sure as the road go by the church, Mike. That's exactly what happened. And you mentioned those heavy run blitzes. Like, I saw it. Like, sometimes it was 8, 9 in the box. I was thinking they might have even did some cover zero yesterday. Like, there is
felt that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's literally like no, threat, whatever. And I think I only saw, like I said, you probably didn't get the chance to see the whole game. But like, I only saw like 2 deep passes yesterday over 15, 20 yards. One to DJ Chalk, which I think didn't result in a penalty, which moved the ball into the red zone for us. But man, Bryce's 25 completions, 12 of them were behind the line of scrimmage yesterday.
So I think the quarterback can be better on his pre-snap stuff. So listen, when he got hit by 22 Harrison, when he got hit for the sack, like, he doesn't even know he's there. I mean, there's a couple things where you're like, come on, or like you're picking like, what side am I going to throw to? I got a smash concept over here. I got double corner on the other side. What am I going to run? There's a couple things pre-snap that I don't play quarterback, and like, oh, you should be looking left, or you're looking right now. So there's a little bit of that because he is young, and then there's a little bit of your receivers really aren't threatening the Minnesota Vikings at all. In other words, the Minnesota Vikings, if Harrison Smith's coming down and run blitzing like every other play, which I know he's not literally, but it felt that way, or if he's in the backfield the whole game, then you go, well, he's one of the safeties. That means they're willing to play single high against 3 wide receivers. They're not afraid of you separating at all.
No.
And I think that's the other issue here is you've got Chark, you've got Thielen, but I saw Terrence Marshall in the game yesterday, but I don't know that the menu that they're giving these receivers is broad enough. In other words, I saw them run a pass concept on first down, and Bryce Young looked to the right when he should have been looking to the left. They ran the ball into incomplete pass. Second down, they ran the ball. The next play, they just ran the exact same concept again. And now he looked to the left and completed the play. But you're kind of going, because you think about all the plays that are on that play sheet. And you start going, okay, everything's done by concept, by formation, by third down, whatever. But there's 300 plays on that play sheet. And he got back to the same one on a pass concept in the middle of the game after 2 plays. That was, you just start going, I wonder how many plays are actually on there that they're willing to call. How many concepts are on there? Are they putting these guys in a position where when they line up every time in that 2x2 with a close look, like there's only 2 or 3 things they're probably doing. Do you think everybody else knows that by now? Interesting.
All right. And you bringing up, Harrison Smith. I checked out, I'm looking at a stat line from yesterday. Check this out, Mike. As a safety, 14 tackles, 3 sacks, 2 tackles for losses, 3 quarterback hits.
Well, that's what that's why he's going to be, he's potentially a Hall of Fame player. He's a phenomenal player. But there's so much you could talk about, right? Obviously, he's being put in a situation where they know they have a rookie quarterback that's not going to have a lot of checks. I mean, this is what a good defense. This is what Brian Flores does. Right. This is why Brian Flores is a great coach. I play in a rookie quarterback. He probably doesn't have a lot of checks. He knows the history of Frank Wright. But okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to heat this guy up all day. The thing that, if you're a Panthers fan, you're like, hey, Icky, how did Harrison Smith sack Bryce Young against you on the last play to end the game? It's that stuff. Like, there's certain things as an organization, as guys in the locker room, you can go, you know what, man, like, it is what it is right now. The quarterback's got a limited menu. Maybe he doesn't have the ability to check. We kind of know we're screwed. We're going to get it. We're going to get heat in the media. The fans are going to be mad at us, but we can deal with our stuff. There's other things where, like, the safety just beat our first round draft pick for a sack. That ain't okay. And so you got to fix that stuff and get good at the basics, fix that stuff. Then all this other stuff, it doesn't necessarily take care of itself, but you're not scoring 6 points on offense.
Right. Yeah, it was it was definitely a tough show. I mean, overall as a unit, I mean, again, we all know about Pete Pro Football Focus, but they're saying we only gave up 7 pressure. They're saying 7 pressure yesterday, but
he had time to throw. He had time to throw, but it's like you guys are, the new Miami motion where you take you take Tyreek and you spread him out so he's going full speed and he hits up the sideline and they read off the inside. So you guys did that with the tight end. A lot of people are doing that now, and they've been doing it for years. It's just famous now because of Miami. But you guys do it yesterday, and they got a tight end running down the, just outside the red line, and it's like, stop. I mean, there's a 20-yard completion, but he runs right into the. I mean, there's these plays where the quarterback's. I don't know if he's off the right, if he's pre-snap, post-snap. I'm not in that room, but I'm just saying, as you're watching the all 22, you're watching the sideline copy, you're going, okay, concept-wise, I've seen these plays before, but you got to the receiver's got to make this, like, we call it making it crayon, which means like 5-year-old's got to see it, right? It's got to be so easy. I run 20 yards, I'm wide open, I sit down. He made a play yesterday, I think to Chark on the left side. He made a great throw. and the receiver had to come back to get it because instead of sitting down in the zone, he kept drifting. It's like you got to make this stuff as easy as possible for the quarterback right now until you get rolling a little bit. Don't make it harder. Make it as easy as possible. And I don't know if they're doing a great job with that.
And Mike, didn't know how well you got to look at the other side, the Panthers' defensive line here. As we mentioned, the Panthers switched over to Everose-based 3-4, which, as you know, he's a student of Dom Capers, who's also here. It seems like the combination of Derek Brown, Shy Tuttle, and Deshaun Williams in the base as the 3-down linemen, with other guys rotating. Of course, Brian Burns, Houston at the outside linebackers. We lost Shaq Thompson to an Achilles, so that really, man, brutal. And Frankie Louvu as the inside backers. But just from a defense line, it feel like the Panthers defense have played good enough to put us in position to win. But as you know, fatigue, always on the field, always put in a tough situation. Eventually, that water gonna break through, and it just seems like that's what they did. Because the first half only gave up like 7 points, and we was in position to go up by 2 touchdowns twice. I think we had a drop by DJ Chalk and a drop by Ian Thomas in the end zone, and it was just a rough day of sledding. But from a defensive side of the trenches, what has stood out to you?
I watched this team play the Saints a couple weeks ago, and I was super impressed with the defensive line. Obviously, Brian Burns had a great game. I think he had a great game. Did you guys play Atlanta as well?
Yeah, that was week 1.
Yeah. Beat the brakes off the tackles in Atlanta. I think he had 3 sacks. I mean, it's just he had some ridiculous stats that game. But the teams look really good. I think the defense, I think early in the season, Derek Brown beat the brakes off Chris Lindstrom the first week of the season. I mean, he absolutely manhandled him, which is, if you're a Carolina Panthers fan, you got to be thrilled to see that. Although I think he plays well against them all the time. Brian Burns is still the guy. What happened yesterday was weird. 2 things happened yesterday, quite frankly, that probably go unnoticed by most people. Okay. First of all, Christian Darrisaw is a first-round draft pick in the National Football League for the Minnesota Vikings, right? Left tackle. He dramatically outplayed the right side of the Carolina Panthers defense. He dramatically outplayed Brian Burns. He dramatically outplayed anybody that he was going to double team, whether it was Derek, whether it was Shai Tuttle. He moved humans off the ball at an alarming rate. The other thing that happened, they have a guy, I think his name is Josh Oliver. He's like a backup tight end, number 84. He absolutely ragdolled YGM, Burns. He was ragdolling guys. So the run game was all you can eat because these guys were getting doubled, single block. I mean, it was one of the better performances, particularly by Josh Oliver, this backup tight end I never heard of before, and he jumping off the screen. How many times he put people on their backs? That makes it, obviously, if you have talent at the running back position, that makes the game. I think having a dominant lineman like Christian Darrisaw went Trent Williams mode in the run game yesterday. Like he was just moving people all over the ball, right? Maybe that's a bit extreme, but you understand where I'm going with that,
right?
But then if you have a really enthusiastic tight end that can Mercedes Lewis. If you have a guy like that who can dominate in the run game at the tight end position, which this guy did dominate yesterday, it's going to be really tough. And that's why they averaged over 5 yards a carry yesterday. I mean, they were killing the defensive line of Carolina Panthers. Frankie Louvu, I love that guy, but it's hard to make tackles if you got guys in your lap the whole game, and that's really what ended up happening for the most part. I think that's a good defense. They're gonna be there in the end. They're gonna be a top 10 defense as long as this offense can keep them off the field a little bit. I just think you have a real problem with, you always talk about one side of the ball complementing the other. Like right now, it's a one-way street.
And final question, we'll wrap this up and then jump to a few comments for get you out of here, Mike. With the Panthers being at 0-4, like you've been in the locker room. Not quite sure with your career if you ever been in a locker room with a record close or similar to that. But what do you think the guys like? How do you feel? Because there seemed to be some visible frustration on the field. Like we saw, what's been rampant on Panthers Twitter today was when Bryce Young threw another behind the line of scrimmage screen pass, and he just kind of like threw his hand down in like frustration. Didn't see any kind of blow-ups or anything. But how do you think the locker room is right now? I heard Brian Burns say post-game that, hey, we just need to man up and get it figured out. But what kind of give us an insight what you think might be happening?
That's a good question. I think when you have a rookie quarterback, certainly the blame doesn't. I don't think this team is a team that. It doesn't seem like this is a team that's pointing fingers. Usually, when the defense is kind of the leaders of the group, which it seems to me that the Carolina Panthers defense is the leaders of the group, you hope they take on that kind of culture and certain demeanor that the defense usually has. Hey, look, we're lunch pail guys. We're tough guys. We're not going to sit here and whine about it. We're just going to go out and do our job the best we can. We're going to hold each other accountable. If it was me, and it's not, but if it was me and I knew that we had the number one pick at quarterback, I would feel, and I just watching the game, the limited action that I've seen, I would feel that they need to take the bit out of his mouth and let him play ball. Right. And let this guy go ahead and do what he's going to do, make the mistakes, but give him the menu of options so that he has an opportunity to be successful, because he can clearly play football at a really high level. It just feels like if you're always facing, 2nd and 12, 3rd and 8, it's just a really, really tough way to play ball. And if you only have a couple pass concepts, if you don't have the full menu again of plays against NFL style of Brian Flores led defense, you're just not going to score points in this league. So my estimation is that this team is going to continue to work. I'm sure they have people in the locker room that are great leaders that have been there during successful teams. You see Von Bell comes over from Cincinnati, a team that struggled for years and now and has found success recently. You have guys that understand what it takes to be successful in this league. So, I think the big thing right now is trying to figure out what the disconnect is between what you see just from a roster standpoint on offense and what the output is, because those two don't really line up for me.
Yeah, it definitely gives a don't mix oil and water type of feel. It's just, it's definitely tough sledding.
Kevin, think about look, I'm just going to name it. DJ Chark's a good player. Okay. Then you got Thielen. He might be on the downside of his career. He's a good, he's a possession receiver. Okay. Now, and then you go through your offensive line. Hayden Hurst, a good player in this league. You got a first pick in the draft. Miles Sanders, a good player in this league. Chuba, good player in this league. You guys there's no reason that to be not a top half offense.
Right.
So you got to ask yourself what's holding you back. And if it is, we're running all these plays behind the line of scrimmage. We're not letting this. Why did you draft a kid? It's I didn't. I don't have a Ferrari sitting in my garage because I like to drive pickup trucks off road. You know what I mean? You don't go buy something you're not going to use. It don't make sense. So.
Yeah. Well, the sentiment amongst Panther fans is play calling to be turned over to offense coordinator Thomas Brown. It's just a really lot of bitter feeling. The fans had the right to feel that way. I definitely just wanted you to share from a player's perspective what that atmosphere may feel like. But leading into our next game real quick is a division rivalry that you're very familiar with. We're at the Detroit Lions. One of the key matchups I'm going to be excited to see is going to be Detroit Lions center Frank Ragnow versus Derek Brown. I think that's going to be a fun individual matchup to watch. Detroit's offensive line. I know you guys played against them Thursday night, and they just playing bully ball. So it's definitely our front seven is definitely going to get tested.
Yeah, the Detroit Lions last week, 2 weeks ago when they got beat, you looked at him and you went, well, Taylor Decker's out. And so now they moved Penei Sewell over to left tackle. And then his name was Matt Nelson. He got hurt. So then they had to bring in this kid, Colby Sorsdahl. And so we're watching because we got Rashawn Gary over there at left defensive end. And we're going, oh, I hope Colby Sorsdahl plays because all of a sudden this is going to be a real fun game. Yeah. And unfortunately, Taylor Decker, got healthy, and all of a sudden that offensive line with Taylor Decker, Jonah Jackson's playing big time ball right now. Frank Ragnell's been an All Pro. Panay Sewell's, obviously a first round draft pick, high level player. Even though they're missing Bataille, Graham Glasgow, has been playing high level. He played really good against us. He was blocking Kenny Clark all over the field. So that's one of the better offensive lines in the league. Jared Goff's playing at a high level. If he can step into his throws, he throws as well as anybody in the National Football League. They have weapons at the wide receiver position. They have weapons. Jamar Gibbs and company. They're just good everywhere. So offensively, that's going to be a real matchup. And the thing about Detroit that'll be fun and also kind of frustrating for you to watch is their offensive line is capable of doing everything. They can do inside zone, outside zone. They can do pin and pulls, toss cracks. They can do the power game, whatever you want, play action pass. They can pull guys, whatever you want to do, they can do. That's what the sign of a really good offensive line. I just think the Panthers, for whatever reason, aren't quite there yet.
Yeah, and another matchup on the flip side will definitely be Ike Ekwonu versus God, what's his name?
I think Aiden will play both sides. Hutch will play both sides, but look, Kaminsky's playing at a high level over there. Charles Harris was a first-round draft pick in Miami out of Missouri for the Dolphins, and he bad situation down there, but he had sacks last week. Like he's playing well. These guys frustrate quarterbacks, and they do a good enough job, whether they're playing man or playing their kind of soft zone of making the quarterback get to their second read, because they feel like against the Green Bay Packers, they were like, hey, we don't need to bring anybody. We send 4 every time, and 4 is good enough. And it was in every way good enough to stifle the quarterback, to get in his face, to sack him, to make him get off his spot. So if they can do that against the Carolina Panthers, like it'll be a tough game. If Bryce has to get off that first read, that second read, and hold the ball, like one of those dudes is going to get there, because they'll bring in 3 defensive ends to rush the passer.
And Mike, we're going to wrap this up here with this question from a fan. I think this is probably of all the questions, this one is my number. Now, I don't know when you played if the play calling through the helmet was coming in, but we have Josh here says, why do you think it was taking so long to call a play? Because like we noticed a lot of times it seemed like the Panthers didn't break the huddle and get to the line with like 8 to 10 seconds left. But when last week with Andy Dalton, it's like we got to the line with like 15, 18 seconds. It just seemed to be a lot of disconnect. We had to burn a timeout because Bryce seemed like he couldn't hear the play calling. Like how does that setup work? Is it coming from the offense coordinator to the quarterback's helmet? Like what can you share about that? To get the play to the quarterback with that setup.
Sure. If they're using the helmet, then somebody's just got a walkie-talkie and is going, I right zap, motion to 6-4 deuce, run Z bullets, Z F stick, and he's like, you got to remember all that stuff, right? Personally for me, I would just have the armband. Hey, run play 67. It just makes a lot of more sense, because then you can start. What you do is if you're able to do that, it's like play 67. If they're at 4, I want you to make sure you look to your check down. If they're in 2, this is what we're thinking. If they go to cover 1, if you see a blitz, then hey, make sure we check out to this run or whatever the situation may be. But when they have these like 12-word sequences for one play, sometimes it's like it gets. Everyone's seen that. Remember Chris Sims? Chris Sims would Gruden's like he couldn't even say the thing in the huddle at training camp, and then Gruden would get all pissed off. Well, like it's not easy. You know what I mean? It's a frustrating thing. So I think that's probably part of the problem. But maybe they take Bryce and go. If it was me and it's not me, I would put an armband on everybody. I don't understand why. It's not like this isn't like a macho thing. Just put an armband on. You can read it right here. It's simple.
Yeah, definitely. It just seems like it's kind of like a offense coordinator or head coach's ego to have all this fancy verbiage and things of that nature. It's just really like excessive. Like I never played pro ball. When I was playing though, it was something simple. I right split left 42 ISO, you know what I'm saying? Or there's any type of pre-snap motion or whatever it was thrown in. But
what they did is they used to have route trees, and so you'd literally just say, hey, we're running 732, and so it'd be like the XYZ 732, right? And then they'd go okay, so let's go near right, fake 67 counter, So now the line knows, okay, near right's the formation. Fake 67 counter means that the right guard's going to pull, and okay, this is where we're setting up. And then it's like 7:32, whatever, right? So tight ends running the 3, got the 7 with the X, and then the Y's or the Z's running the 2. And then they had to tag something. So the running backs coach says, hey, can you tag that with H blast? So he knows to run the blast route. Go, okay, so 7:32, and then hey, can you remember to tag this? So they started going from that to just let's have one word. So let's just call that Voltron. Hey, we're running Voltron out of far right near or whatever. So far right near Voltron. And then they had to start doing tags. So everything starts like they try to simplify it, but then every room regardless of like who you're playing or that specific defense, they're like, hey, you need to tag this guy. You need to tag this guy. So it went from far right near Voltron to far right near Voltron X dagger, far right near Voltron X dagger H choice, far right near X dagger. It just keeps going and going and going. And before you know it, like you're back where you started.
Yeah, well, we definitely appreciate that because just seems to be such a disconnect there. All right. Well, Mike, again, man, thank you so much. I know I reached out to you, on a hope and a prayer today was available because I don't get back on the road till tomorrow, but I'm glad you made time for this here. We, as always, man, because I'm looking at the comments, you still have a lot of love from Panther fans here in Carolina. I don't know if your schedule ever allow you to come out this way. Hey, but if you do, let me know. I'll treat you. Dinner's on me.
Oh, there we go.
But yeah, you're a longtime favorite, and you're still well remembered and loved out here. So, had a few comments. I know we talked about before. They're like, "Ask Mike to suit back up." Like, nah, Mike's days is done.
No. Yeah.
Well, ask him if you want to coach. No, Mike's not doing that. All right, so Mike, I'm gonna give you the last word here. Let our fans know where they can follow you at on Process to Perform.
Yeah, check me out, Mike Wahle 68 on Twitter, Process to Perform on Instagram, and then check out our Process to Perform channel on YouTube. Been doing a lot of videos there with football, breaking down different games. So if you enjoy that stuff, please go and check that out. Subscribe to us, man. Thanks for having me on, Kevin. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I would say this, even though you do it with Amon Green, the On the Block podcast you guys got. I know we're Panther fans, but if you enjoy great podcasting like we do here at the 4-Man Rush. If you ever get time, to check it out, him and Amon Green, it's fun just watching two pros just chop it up, and let us fans listen in. So definitely, you guys want to get a different flavor. It's definitely something worth listening to. So just want our fans to know that about you as well. All right. Well, Mike, thank you again for coming on here with the 4-Man Rush. And we thank all of our fans who chimed in, listened. Once again, great participation. I'm here by our fans taking time out their day to listen to us. As always, everybody stay safe. Panther fans, it's rough. We're going to get through it. And as always, keep pounding. What a rush. Mike, we look forward to seeing you again, hopefully later on this season.
Thank you much. Have a good one.
You too.